I'm wondering, for those in democracies that are watching what's happening in Russia, and Russia's falling apart right now, and that are watching what's happening in China, and China with a very different system is doing quite well economically and in other ways, which is the more powerful lesson, and what kind of lessons are being taken away in democracies today?
Well, I think one of the lessons that we should take from the pandemic and the last few years is that we need to become more serious about solving our problems, that we are in a real ideological competition with autocratic countries. Though we're seeing in Russia and North Korea, in Ukraine, what it means to live under an autocratic ruler or what it means to be subject to the power of these resurgent autocracies. So we all should want to make sure that the 21st century remains safe for democracy, that these fundamental values of individual freedom and collective self-determination actually win the day. But to do that, it's not enough to wax poetic about our beautiful values or to rely on the idea that somehow our system has always proven strong in the past, so it's going to do so again. We need to make sure that our system actually delivers for its own citizens and remains a model where people in rising nations like India, like Nigeria, like Kenya, look around the world and say, we would rather be more like Germany or the United States than like Russia or China. And that is up to us and the decisions we make here.
And the end of the 20th century was safe for democracy. Looking forward, increasingly, you would argue, and I agree, that the 21st century increasingly is less safe for democracy. If it turns out that we fail, that the great experiment fails, why will that have been?
I think for two reasons. The first is that there is a basic human instinct towards groupishness. There's a basic instinct to form groups and to discriminate in favor of the members of the in-group and against the members of the out-group. This is particularly salient in ethnically and religiously diverse democracies, where it's very easy to say, I don't care about being American, I care about being X, Y, and Z. Now, thankfully, there is a way to respond to that, which is that it depends on the social context, on the framing, on the incentives, what groups you give importance to. And I think if our societies fall apart, it's because we end up giving more importance to our ethnic belonging, to our cultural roots, or to our partisan identity than to our common interests, than to the things that we actually share as Americans here in the United States, as Germans in Germany, as Indians in India. And so I think if we fail, it's because a lot of the institutions that are influential in society, from politics to education to the media, haven't tried hard enough to emphasize the importance of discovering and seeing those commonalities.
That was reason one. You said there were two.
Well, the second goes to partisan identity. When the founding fathers started the first great experiment, in a way my book is about the second great experiment, when they founded the United States, it seemed like a foolhardy project. When you looked around in 1776, there really weren't many countries that had succeeded in governing themselves because people formed these groups, not necessarily ethnic or religious groups, but just partisan groups of one family, one clan, one party, one faction fighting the other. We have a set of institutions to try and manage that tension, but it always depends on the choices of individuals, on how we frame our politics, whether we manage to stop those factions from becoming so bitter that they would rather win against their enemy than preserve the system. And so the two great dangers is that we fail to build diverse democracies that work, that manage to build commonality between different ethnic and religious groups. And the second is that the partisans of one political party become so obsessed with victory, vilify their partisan opponents to such an extent that they're willing to blow up the system to gain power or to remain in power.